Hi, I'm Audrey George with Audrey George Consulting, and welcome to Real Talk. Today, we're with Mindy Rapp. She's the Chief Operating Officer at Standard Iron up in Minnesota, and Destiny Lara. She's a civil engineer at Burns and McDonnell here in Chicago. Welcome to you both. So, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate having you both on. Mindy, let's start with you. Could you share with us your journey to your current role? How did you start? How did you get there?
Yeah, I will do that. And I'm going to go all the way back since Destiny's a fellow engineer. So I am a manufacturing engineer by education. I have a bachelor's degree in manufacturing engineering and a master's degree in manufacturing systems engineering
Mm.
that I got. And then I started at General Motors as a production engineer. And while I was at General Motors for 10 years, I was fortunate to also get my MBA, my master's in business, while I was working for General Motors. During General Motors time for 10 years, I progressed through a variety of operations roles, starting as a production engineer, and then I started to make the steps into frontline leadership.
Mm.
So all of my frontline leadership experiences is with General Motors, on the shop floor, in maintenance and production and such. And then I started up the ranks. After 10 years at General Motors, I had the opportunity to go to Caterpillar for 13 years. And I can't say enough about the Caterpillar Leadership Development Program. Once again, continued my journey through operations and support roles of operations leadership, manufacturing engineering leadership, quality leadership. And my final role at Caterpillar was facility manager over an entire campus. From there, I went into higher level executive roles in manufacturing, VP of operations, where I was multi-site at a variety of companies, landed me where I am today, chief operating officer, 7 sites in North America, and continuing to grow. So thanks for having me here today, Audrey.
Yeah, appreciate it. Mindy, let's back up for just a second. So you started in a very large company and then went to another very large company and really benefited from their development programs.
Absolutely, specific programs, and I think it's pretty common. And like I know GE, Eaton also have great programs, and I always coach mentees. If they're coming out of college and they have an opportunity to get into a rotational leadership program in a company that has a really good one, highly recommend those. When I was at General Motors, I was identified as an employee with potential. So I was put into what was called the High Potential Program, and I had the opportunity to have an executive mentor.
Mm.
And part of that was a rotational role where every 12 to 24 months, I was getting indexed to my next developmental operate experience. Starting with, like I said, production engineering, and then frontline leadership in a support organization, then direct frontline leadership, production employees that built the vehicles, and then started the climb up from there. And it was all part of the program, including indexing to a second site. They're like,
Mm.
okay, you've got the developmental site in Wisconsin, moving you to a site in Missouri. And once again, to continue that development with different cultures, a different union, a different style, different products. And I call it the layers of the Mindy onion. They just kept building them. I got a lot of layers of the Mindy onion, thanks to that developmental program. Moving to Caterpillar after 10 years, same thing. Caterpillar has a variety of leadership programs, whether you're an emerging leader, whether you're a mid-level manager, or whether they've got you teed up for operations, facility manager leadership, and then the executive leadership tracks. And once again, those are full curriculums that I had the benefit of. You always look back, Audrey, and you're like, wow, how did I get here?
Mhm.
How do I know all this? How am I this prepared? Sometimes when you look at your peers across the table that haven't had the development and the investment that General Motors and Caterpillar gave to me. But that 23 years in those highly professional organizations have then allowed me as my jumping off point into kind of my leadership journey, chief operating officer. Really, if you look at and know my profile, which is an enterprise driver, that independence, getting into the mid-level company opportunities is where I've really, really enjoyed my work. But had I not had that foundation and that leadership development, Caterpillar and General Motors, there's no way, Audrey and Destiny, there'd be no way I'd be where I am today. So I'm very thankful for those programs, my mentors, my advocates, all of those people that got me to where I am today. So just being a small town farm kid from central Illinois with a graduating class of 48 to where I am
Wow.
today, it's been a journey. So.
Really appreciate you sharing all. I want to come back to a couple of things about kind of the enterprise level experience that you had versus kind of the side. You're still in large organizations, but I imagine you've taken and pivoted a lot of what you've learned and brought that to your organizations. Before we get to that though, Destiny, I want to get kind of your reaction as Mindy's talking. What's hitting you? How's that landing?
Yeah, while she's talking, I'm like there's a lot of questions being raised, like how has moving around the United States impacted you?
Mm.
How has like staying for a company for a very long time, how has that impacted you? Like, did you think you should jump earlier or make the move earlier? Like, there's just a lot of questions running through my head. But I did like how you touched on being in a big company or like being in a company that is investing in their like newer employees, like starting off young, like rotational program. I've been very fortunate to have my company kind of guide me, and my company is a lot smaller than, my other friends who like had training for like 6 months. And then when I tell them like, oh, I'm like in client calls, like they kind of just jump me in because I'm like one out of two new hires this year. So it's like it's a different experience. Definitely like being a rotational program and then not having that. So it's just like getting a different perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great questions.
And I think, Destiny, your experience is really more common, right? Most businesses aren't enterprise level businesses. Now, enterprise level businesses have a lot of employees, and so they seem like kind of they're everywhere, but there aren't really kind of percentage wise, that's 1% of businesses, right? They have,
Hmm.
thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of employees among them all. But your experience is, I think, really more common. And so, Mindy, let's go back to kind of connecting that thought with something you said earlier. You're in a large organization, but not enterprise level. How have you brought what you've learned to kind of how you're developing leaders in your organization?
Absolutely, Audrey and Destiny. So, definitely let's just take specific to the standard iron role. Why did they hire me? They hired me because I know what good looks like. I
Mm,
know what good looks like coming from those companies, from lean manufacturing, the Caterpillar production system, a quality management system that's world class at General Motors. Having that experience with what I call world class. Best example is safety. Caterpillar, world class safety. And I have been blessed to have that experience. So now I can walk into smaller family owned companies. The 7 sites that I have were former family owned companies that are now part of private equity and Standard Iron. And we continue to look at acquisitions, which are also small family owned companies
mm,
that have done fantastic for generations. They've done really good. But then now, how do we take really good, take the elements of world class, and then apply them where it makes sense into those mid-size enterprises? A good example for me is how we do good root cause investigations in the area of safety. There is no better than Caterpillar. And taking that skill set and taking it to a new company where, one of my maintenance men actually said, really? You want us to go inspect every one of our tools in our toolbox to make sure? And I said, yes. That is exactly what we are going to do. So they don't, in the mid-level companies, they don't know what they don't know. And when you bring in a leader like me who has that experience of world class, now you can't go and just take it, verbatim and swap it over. You have to apply the tool specifically and appropriately. Not all leaders can do that. But if you can apply it correctly in the right levels, at the right time where you don't break an organization or take them to where they see you as a point of insanity, that then you can really see success when they're like, wow, I never even thought of some of the concepts So that's where I have found the biggest value that I'm able to bring to the plants.
And what about in developing kind of the folks on your team? How what specifically, or have you, I guess I should say, specifically brought over any kind of lessons from your training into how you're developing others now?
No, no, that's a great question, and I actually just got back from providing some feedback to some candidates who were interested in a position and didn't get it, and we were providing them the feedback on next steps, and it was exactly that, sitting across from an employee, in Destiny, just simply asking someone, "What do you want to do? What is your passion? Do you want to be an individual contributor? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to lead people, projects?" And really getting to know people at that level on what makes them tick, and then we can set a development program from there. In the companies that I've been in, Audrey, that don't have that level of development programs that we had at General Motors and Caterpillar, that they don't even exist. That concept of a development plan doesn't even exist.
That's right.
So, you know what I mean? So let's go in, let's start with, let's get you an advocate. Let's get you a buddy that you're going to meet with on a monthly basis. I want you to go back and think, what do you want to do in 3 to 5 years? Just the simple question of, do you want to be a leader or do you want to be an individual contributor? That is life changing. Because if you put a leader in an individual contributor role, a lot of times they're going to be disengaged and vice versa.
That's right.
So working with an employee and supporting them, and then you always get that answer, "Well, I just want to make money." I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. We want to make money, and you can make money in each of these paths. You can be tech leaders, and you can be very well compensated individual contributors, but it all starts with your passion, your fit, and your motivation, because we got to enjoy what we're doing every day, because it's called work. It's not called fun. It's called work. So if we're going to go to work every day, it's got to be something that we enjoy doing. And I've looked some people in the eyes and said, "Are you sure you want to be a leader, a people leader? Are you
Mm.
sure that's what you want to do?" And sometimes just asking that question just takes that final weight off their shoulders. And they're like, "Yeah, no, really, I don't want to," or vice versa, right? So spending the time, and when I was getting ready for today, I thought a lot about what's that one common denominator, and it's trust. It's trust. If we can work with our employees, develop that trusted relationship, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I care about you. That's how that great conversations can happen, to really get to know what an employee wants, and then I can help take them there. If we can't get to the trusted, transparent conversations, it's going to just be, fake news. So,
Yeah, you've said quite a few things that I want to pause on for a second. First, you started with when we give people feedback about why they didn't get the role. So just pause and kudos, because I can't tell you how many employees I talk to that are so frustrated that they don't get an answer, that they get
right.
ghosted or they get a generic answer. And I think so many folks, right, we want to know how to get better. Right.
Yep.
If you're applying for a job, it's because you're trying to scale yourself up, right? You're trying to develop, you're trying to advance. And if you don't fit, real feedback is so important. I've always been one of those people that, like, if you can tell me something that I can do my job better tomorrow, that's going to make my day. That's not going to make me upset.
Absolutely.
That's going to make my day. But I've always found it incredibly difficult to get what I would just call like real, just straightforward feedback. And so as a leader of other team members, I've tried to
Hmm.
provide that for folks. But I don't think it's very common. I think it's a very kind of tricky skill for leaders to develop. I think folks kind of, as they're going up through their career, right, we do them a disservice if we're not actually sharing. Like, I love the question that you asked, right? What do you prefer? Individual contributor role, leadership role? Like, which one do we actually? I think a lot of folks assume people want to be leaders. I
Hmm.
think a lot of folks assume they're supposed to work towards being a leader, right? That's what we're told. And so to kind of even just pause and like let people reflect on that and reflect on that deeply. And even when you got an answer that you thought maybe wasn't a fit, like you went back and re-asked the question, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's really beneficial. Destiny, I know you've got questions. Let me let you jump in here.
Yeah. I guess how do you have those difficult conversations? I know like it's always hard to tell someone what you're doing wrong or like what you're doing bad. So how have you learned to have those conversations?
No, sure. Great question, Destiny. And I'll be honest, once again, I go back to we had courses as part of our development at Caterpillar on how to provide feedback for, performance management and providing feedback. So, the basis of that is there are some great courses out there. And that doesn't mean, well, shoot, I don't work at Caterpillar, I can't get that course. I guarantee you giving courses on giving feedback are very common. I bet you could go do a search right now and find a free one in about 10 minutes. That skill of giving feedback, number one, I practice in advance. I prepare. I never go into those cold, Destiny. I always go in thoughtfully. I mean, especially if it's a feedback with like an interview panel that we meet in advance. What are the items that we're going to talk about? So being prepared for those shows the employees that we respect them and that we care. We care about, them and making them better. And then giving a feedback in a positive way. And you've probably heard of the sandwich method, and I'm a firm believer in the sandwich method. You start with the top, you start with something good, and then you give them the meat. You're like, okay, you did really well on these items. Here's your areas of opportunities, and then close out with that bun, which is, I'm here to help you. Thank you for applying. You have a bright future. And then now let's go from here. So, providing feedback in the sandwich method, it seems basic, but it really works. Because if you just go at them with the meat, and you know what, Destiny, early career, that was me. That was me. I was all meat, right? I'd come right at you. And then, sometimes that's not taken fondly and you're called fun words. But you learn these skills. They're learned skills, and you develop them and you get better over time. And you got to practice, because once you do one, you're going to know well with that employee what didn't. And that's how we got to learn, and we got to always get better. But the more you practice them, the more you do them, the better you're going to be. But all week long I was giving feedback, and one employee, Destiny, I said, hey, feedback is a gift, and I'm going to give you a lot of gifts today, is kind of how I started the conversation. So, if you have a good relationship with your employees, they're gonna appreciate, and they're gonna thank you at the end of the day.
Bringing it back to the trust that you talked about earlier, right? Kind of you have to have
Yep.
a strong foundation. If you just walked around bashing people over the head with, here's what you're doing wrong, that's not going to go very well, right? You're building a
Correct.
foundation. You're sharing with them what they are doing well. You're helping them see where they're growing, where they're gaining, and then also where their opportunities are, right? One of the things I've learned over the years is framing things not as problems but as opportunities, right? And just kind of helping people with that mental shift, because then they feel like, a lot of us come up like thinking we have to be perfect, right? We have to get everything right. And
Right.
when you make a mistake, we kind of get caught in that, right? We did 99 things right. That one thing didn't go as well. We just ruminate on the one, right? And
Yep.
to kind of learn to see that as that's the opportunity, not the quote unquote problem, is kind of a frame that I've really tried to bring to conversations. Destiny, how do you think about feedback?
I think at first when I started my career, I was really scared to ask for feedback. I know nothing. What if the feedback's bad? What if they tell me like something I don't want to hear? But I kind of learned to appreciate the feedbacks I received from like my mentors and just my coworkers. When they give me feedback, it's really showing that they're taking the time to watch me grow or want me to do better in my career. Like I could give an example. Like earlier this week, I messed up on I wasn't understanding something I was modeling in a software we use. And my coworker stepped aside, spent like an hour of his day just trying to go through manuals and code and saying, this is how we get the values. This is why the system is spitting red at you. There's something wrong with XYZ. So just taking that hour, an hour and a half of that time to kind of watch me grow, to kind of give me feedback. And I really, it's something that I appreciated. And I guess I could become less scared of asking for feedback. Now when I submit something, I'm like, oh, please let me know if there's any comments and how I could fix these comments. And
What do you think made that shift for you? How do you think you made that shift from kind of being
Mhm.
afraid to being, I don't know if eager is the right word, but interested at least, right? And kind of what you can learn.
I think it was definitely the trust built between my coworkers and my mentors. Like at first I was scared, what if what if I'm risking my job for this? What if, I don't know, like if I ask something wrong, they're gonna think that like I don't actually know what I'm doing. But that's not the case. Like they know I'm coming in not knowing what I'm doing. Like I've been in school for my whole life. Like no one just comes in knowing what they're doing. So I guess just being comfortable with like being vulnerable with these coworkers and like my mentors, like, yeah, I'm not at the place you're at, but I know you want to see me get to the place you're at. Has kind of helped me, feel comfortable asking them questions.
Well said. Well said. You both have mentioned mentors. Mindy, maybe let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit about someone that's had an impact on you? Whether you don't need to name them, you can if you want to, certainly, but just kind of a way that you've been impacted by a mentor in your career.
And we have those mentors, and we have, mentors, and one of the newer words that's used for that is an advocate, that has somebody that's really supporting you and advocating for you in roles. Way back in the day at General Motors, when I got put into the high potential program, and they assign you to one of the executives, right? And to really have that advocate in the boardroom that says, hey, way back in the body shop, there's this Mindy Rapp, she's brand new, and you have an advocate in the room. Now you have to perform, right? It's the price of admission is being a good performer. You just can't have an advocate that think that they're gonna put their name out there for you if you're not a performer. So it does start with basics of being a high performer. But I think the best example for me is when I was at Caterpillar. My leader, his name is Adam Mize, and he's currently, I believe, a plant manager in Wamego, Kansas. I remember the call he gave me one day. I was working as a manufacturing engineering director, and he called me and he says, Mindy, he says, there's this position open in South Milwaukee for the facility manager. And he says, I think you're the best candidate that Caterpillar has for that role. And it was one of those game changer moments, Destiny, you mentioned kind of being afraid or scared or not thinking you're ready. There was no way there was no way I thought I was ready for that position. There was no way I was gonna apply for that position. But I needed to really give me that courage and confidence that I was ready to do it. And it was like the pivotal moment of my career. That was like my launching pad. And I never would have done it had I not had that advocate. And I take that very seriously now, as now my role of how can I make sure that I'm doing that for my employees. And when they don't have that courage or confidence, and if they don't see that they're there, that's my job. That's my job, to be there, to mentor them, to help them, and then to advocate and be their courage for them until they get it for themselves. Destiny, I call it the good witch from Wizard of Oz when she says at the end, Dorothy, it was in there all along, right? So you've got the courage in you all along, but sometimes you need that advocate, you need that Audrey, you need that Mindy to come and say, no, you're ready, and I'm gonna help you, so.
I think this is fascinating because I think a lot of people, when they think of advocate, they think of advocating for you, right?
Yeah.
He said, Mindy, he said to other people within Caterpillar, this is the person we should send. What was, in addition to that being powerful, what was equally or perhaps even more powerful for you was he was advocating to you about you,
Yep.
right?
Yep. What was that, Destiny?
You're always your best advocate.
Absolutely.
Find that courage
Absolutely.
in.
And then Destiny, staying on kind of the mentor theme, how has mentoring affected you in your career? I know kind of you're just starting out, but
Yeah.
if you
I
run
feel like,
into, you've got a great coworker there, it sounds like that's helpful.
yeah, I think like mentors, or I've had different mentors like growing up. Like, for example, Horizons for Youth, they provided me with a mentor that kind of guided me through high school and like the college application. And then in college, I've had like a professor who kind of mentored me and kind of helped me find like what field I'm interested. And now I'm like, I feel like my coworker is my big mentor, my biggest advocate. And it's kind of like how you mentioned, they're encouraging you to take bigger leaps in your career. For example, I think my coworker kind of saw that I was getting comfortable in the software. I was just like being able to program so faster. And he was like, all right, it's time to upgrade. It's time for you to like actually be in the client call. It's time for you to take leadership, start giving them, biweekly updates and take responsibility. So he's kind of push me past my boundary. Like it's easy to get comfortable in the position you're in. And like that's kind of what you want to be, like comfortable in the position that you're currently in. But he's like uplifting me and making sure that I could get comfortable in, a leadership position.
Destiny, I want to make sure you get a chance to ask your questions. You had a few earlier that I want to make sure you had a chance to come back to.
Yeah. Yeah, I had two, I guess, like how has moving around the United States been an impact in you? And then we could talk on schooling afterwards.
Okay, no problem. Or we could talk on schooling now too. So you talked about moving around, quite a bit. I physically lived in 3 locations. Four locations that I physically had, what I would call corporate moves, from Wisconsin to Missouri to Illinois back to Wisconsin. How have those impacted me? First of all, I gotta say, that has given me, I'm going to go back to it, those layers of the Mindy onion, right? It puts me and into new cultures, into new environments, in demographics and where I've lived. And I think that has helped me be, who I am today. Had I been just in one location, one regional area, but being exposed to a variety of areas, like I said, just living in the Midwest, but I have led facilities in the Southeast and in Mexico, in England, China, France, and Canada. All of those have different cultures and different dynamics, and you learn something from everyone. And Destiny, you're going to develop those tools in your leadership toolbox. And there's some tools that are the same in every one of those, which is trust, transparency, clear direction, accountable leadership. Those are going to be the same across all of them, but then you have to be able to, be flexible and be approachable in the environment that you are. So I think it's made me, like I said, even more layers of the Mindy onion, which to me I've really enjoyed. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, like new experiences.
Yes.
And then going back to schooling, did you feel like getting your master's and going back for an MBA was helpful? Or did you think you could get those experience just through the development programs that you mentioned?
Great question. So when I was getting my undergraduate engineering degree, I worked in a co-op program where I was getting career experience. While I was doing that, Destiny, I realized that I'll be honest, I just wasn't ready to go to work full time. At the end of my undergraduate degree, I wasn't ready to just go to work. I wanted to continue to learn. And so that's why I went straight on after my undergraduate degree and got my master's in engineering. And also, a master's in manufacturing engineering isn't one of those programs you can do very easily while you're working. So I took the advantage while I was young, and I had some good coaching and mentoring that says, go do it now. And I use that master's in engineering every day. There isn't a day that goes by in my job, even now as chief operating officer, that I'm not thinking my technical leadership of the job that I do, because manufacturing, engineering, and quality are all part of my roles. Moving on, when I was with General Motors, going back for my master's in business, absolutely. Once again, I'm all about learning. They offered it to me. The MBA program that they offered was one that I could do in the evenings. So that continuous career learning to me was super important. And when I got that MBA, it was the first time that it was a lot more collaborative team assignments and projects. And Destiny, I didn't have that as much when I was in engineering school. It was more individual contributor work. So getting those 2 degrees in my technical leadership combined with that MBA, which is more of that collaborative team approach, has probably prepared me pretty well for where I am today. There isn't a day that goes by, Destiny, that I'm not like, I want to go back for another one. I want to keep learning. And Now, that's not for career advancement. I don't want to go say, I'm going to go get a degree in AI because it's going to advance my career, right? That's not how I think. If I want to go get a degree in something else or a certificate in something else, it's because I have a passion for it. I know not only is it going to make me, my company better, but it's going to make my people better too. That I'm going to be able to use that skill set because I'm to the point in my career, it ain't about me anymore. And I'm to that point in my career that I am all about how can I support and develop the folks behind me. So that continuous career learning is important not only for me, but for those people that I help support every day as well. So keep learning, keep learning. You won't regret it. You won't regret it.
Thank
So
you.
continuous learning, Mindy, it sounds like kind of, I don't know if I'd call that a habit, but like it's a mindset that you have. Are there
Absolutely.
habits that you practice in your daily, weekly, monthly that kind of really help you stay in the leadership zone that you want to be in, that help you operate at the level at which you want to operate?
So that's a great question, and another one that I thought about pretty heavily as getting ready for today. And it might not be the answer that you're going to expect, Audrey, which is probably pretty expected of me that you're not going to get answers that you expect from me. But my focus on my health and wellness is absolutely critical to me as a leader, and I hope everybody can hear this and listen to this. My physical well-being and my mental well-being every day are absolutely critical, and I have to protect me because I am a strong leader. I am very important to my team, and in order to do that, I give myself, as I say, I leave it all on the field every day. Every day I put my head on the pillow and I'm like, wow. But if I don't invest in myself, in my health, my wellness, my mental, stress relief, I will not remain the leader that I am. That stress is going to get to me. I'm not going to respond in the best way possible. So if I'm going to show up every day as the best leader I can be, I have to invest in myself, and that's sacred. That's sacred to me.
Are you willing to share any specifics about how you do that?
So I mean, there isn't a day that I don't, look at my watch. How many steps am I getting? Are just taking, there's days that, okay, I don't have time to work out. Well, I'm at least gonna get a walk in, right?
Mhm.
And vitamin D is absolutely critical. I'm like, oh, sun's shining, middle of winter in Minnesota, I'm still gonna get out and get some sunshine. But the importance of just being aware of that, making sure that you're getting your fitness in, for that stress relief, for that wellness, eating well. And I am a heavy traveler, so those restaurants are always there. But making sure that you're making the good decisions on eating right, and what you put in you is super critical. To me, Audrey, all of those things are super important. And the final secret sauce is sleep. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. I'm gonna get my 7 hours, and sometimes that 7 hours has to start at about 7 or 8 p.m. in order for me to get it, because of the role that I have. But all of those things combined are important, and if you think you're cool or tough, to be able to power through those, it's not going to happen. You have to invest in yourself and your well-being.
Appreciate you sharing that.
Yep.
Mindy, if you can think back to kind of when you were Destiny's age, what advice might you go back and give yourself? Or what message would you share with your younger self?
I mean, it has to be, I would tell myself, Mindy, the hard work is going to pay off.
Mm.
It's going to pay off, right? You just trust me. Wait till you see, where you're going to be. It is going to pay off. I tell my kids, all the time, grind in your 20s, because then when you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, you're going to be in those roles. When I look around at some of my kids, their friends getting out of college, and hey, I'm going to take 3 years off and go to Europe, and then I'll decide to get a job. I am much more of the mindset of grind in your 20s. Get that strong foundation, and then all of the fun will come along the way. But my advice to myself would be hard work pays off.
Appreciate that. I appreciate
Yep.
that. We're gonna wrap us up with a couple of final questions to both of you. And Destiny, I think we'll start with you. kind of what's some of the best advice you've received so far?
It's probably not an advice towards leadership, but it's an advice that kind of gives me motivation is that like once you graduate college, like your life is just beginning. And
Mm.
so, and Mindy just said like grinding your 20, like that's so like it just resonates with me. Like that's so right. I have so much left in my career. Like I don't know why I'm thinking that I have to do everything in 5 years when I have my whole life. But yeah, like you're correct. I should grind.
Yeah, I think that's really common. I remember that, right? I remember being 23 and wanting to have like all these things done by the time I was 24 or
Mhm.
25, right? It's really, our careers are very long. I think we lose track of that. I think we lose track of that. So thanks for sharing that mindset and approach. Mindy, what's some of the best leadership advice you've received?
It has to be back from my very first boss way back in the day, when I was in college in Peoria. My boss would whenever I'd go ask him a question about my career, like, hey, what do you think about, if I should move from this co-op to this engineering position, or what do you think if I should go from General Motors to Caterpillar? He would always say to me the same thing, and I didn't realize it for like 10 years. Every time I would go talk to him, his name was Joe, he'd say, there's more to life than. Mindy, there's more to life than John Deere. Go to General Motors. Mindy, there's more to life than General Motors. Yes, you're right. Go on to Caterpillar. And I remember that conversation I had with him. I'm like, Joe, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm starting to miss my kids' activities. I'm starting to miss, the T-ball after work, and I was getting really frustrated. And Joe gave me the exact same advice. Mindy, there's more to life. There's more to life than work, right? So what did I learn from Joe Ritchie in Peoria, Illinois? There's more to life. And every step we take, there's more to life. And I think that's important for us to understand. It's life, it's work, it's family, it's friends, it's relationships, it's your spiritual journey. It's the whole package. There's more to life, and what that means to you. And it gets back to that courage point. I don't think I would have made the leaps that I made had Joe Ritchie not said, Mindy, there's more to life. Go do it. So
There's more to life than dot, dot,
exactly.
dot.
And you could just put it on your wall because it is so true. And like I said, the first 3, 4 times I went to him, I didn't get it. But like then you get that career maturity, you're like, oh, I get it. There's more to life than. So
There's more to life than. Well, I think that's an excellent mantra. I think that's an excellent piece of advice. I think that's a great place to end the conversation. So, Mindy,
okay.
Destiny, thank you both so much for all that you've shared today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Audrey. This is a great platform. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.